Hello, I'm Professor Emeritus Ken Hardy, talking today with John Francis, HBA 86, who's founder and CEO of Fraser, Kearney Capital. John, welcome back to Ivey.
Great to be here.
You've been a very successful business person at Goldman Sachs, Murdoch family, auto trader, and now your own firm. I just want to ask you a few questions about leadership, because you've exhibited a lot of leadership for 2014 and 12, 26 years. Do you think that one leadership personality fits all job situations?
Absolutely not. I think there are certain leaders for certain situations that really have to be the right attitude and the right demeanor for that business or that particular organization's needs. And just to cite as an example, it's a very different psychology and motivation between managing a business that's growing 25% a quarter versus running a business that's growing 3% a year. Mm-hmm. And there's a level of patience and expectation that each of those leaders have to demonstrate that are quite different. Now, it doesn't mean you couldn't have the same person, but they need to be capable of morphing themselves into the desired characteristics to succeed in those two different situations. And I think I had, in my own experience, I experienced that quite directly in my business in the early days, with very rapid growth. And in the final days before I sold, where growth was significantly slower. It was still there, but it wasn't anything like what I had been dealing with. And so the challenges were quite different.
What's the first thing you look for when you're looking to fill a position in one of your companies?
Well, I think probably the first thing that I'm looking for is, really without question, that the aptitude and the skill set are consistent with what I need in that role. Mm-hmm. And I've always sort of adhered to the kind of model of assessing abilities and attributes first, then assessing attitude, mm-hmm. Willingness to do certain things and willingness and approach to certain challenges, and then finally fit. Fit with me, fit with my team, fit with the group. And so I call it kind of ability, attitude, fit.
Mm-hmm. Very good. What's the single biggest learning experience you had personally in leading in all these various roles?
I think probably the most valuable, and in hindsight, I wish I'd mentioned it today to your class, probably the most valuable was recognizing that, and I'll preface this by saying, anytime I've spoken to other leaders and other entrepreneurs about any regrets they may have, invariably the regrets turn to not having dealt with people issues rapidly enough. Mm-hmm. And for me, the biggest lesson for me has been when I've had a problem or when I've been dealing with an issue and making an attempt to rehabilitate or solve it with the people at the table, I usually did more harm than good. Mm-hmm. And the big lesson for me was, when you've got somebody who is not gelling or is not aligned with the culture and the organization and your team, mm-hmm. You're better off having the seat empty than filled.
Mm-hmm. Why is there a reluctance to wade into the middle of those quickly and decide quickly?
I think the message it sends to people organizationally is that, if you act rashly, people think you're not doing the work, doing the analysis, being reasonable. Mm-hmm. But conversely, if you act too late, they lose respect for your judgment, your mm-hmm. decision making. So I think it's a very fine line between mm-hmm. acting too quickly and too abruptly and appearing rash and waiting too long. Mm-hmm. So I think that's definitely a challenge in any organization, but if anything, my takeaway is that I would err on the side of being too early than being too late.
Mm-hmm. to the class, you mentioned that you like to set up a business or a department and then back off and let them run with it. And we talked a little bit about finding partners or finding employees, but let's talk about partners in business, people who can co-lead. What do you look for?
In people that I've partnered with in the past and had a lot of success with, first and foremost, before even agreeing to partner with them, I want them. Mm-hmm. Like, I want them as part of what I'm doing, because I have respect for their ability and their talent. They've already demonstrated it. Mm-hmm. I don't have to figure out if they're good at what they do. I already know that. So I've already made a decision by the time I'm at the table talking about partnership that this is somebody I want to partner with. Mm-hmm. And I think that really sort of gets you off on a very positive foot when the other party feels that they're sought after, mm-hmm. And sought after for the reasons that they're capable of adding value to a situation, and the reasons that you want them are the right reasons. So I think that allows you to embark on the partnership, whether you can come to terms or whether you can agree on how you work together is a whole mm-hmm. other, kind of economic and, governance issue. Mm-hmm. But I think that first and foremost is what I've always focused on. And when I've looked at any kind of partnerships where it's just, hey, we get together and you and I just think this is kind of a neat idea and we like each other and we'll throw some money in and try this out, it seldom ever prospers the way.
It pays to do due diligence.
Yeah. You have to really know why you want somebody as a partner.
And how much checking do you do?
In most cases, most of the partnerships that I've been involved in, most of the checking involved, validating their business mm-hmm. and validating their customer relationships in some cases and their business capabilities. But in one particular case, I went into a partnership with a couple of people who I was basically posting them to their own business and leaving an existing employer mm-hmm. where I wasn't really able to do much work, reference work on mm-hmm. them beyond knowing that they'd been successful in what they've been doing with their previous employer. So that was a bit of a gamble, and it worked out, thankfully, but it was one that was really predicated on knowing their abilities right. Within their firm.
You and I talked earlier, and you said one of the things you always look for is complementarity when you're bringing together a team. You don't want someone who can do the same things you can do. You're always looking for people who've got other skill packages.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the things that I hate to generalize, but it's impossible not to. But people I've had on teams that are highly creative and very innovative just don't have the attention to detail or interest mm-hmm. in attention to detail, or for that matter, even how we're going to execute this idea. Mm-hmm. Yet, their input's invaluable, provided it's measured and mm-hmm. and it's not just throw everything up, onto the table. And equally, the people who are the greatest implementers I've ever worked with don't typically generate a lot of great new intellectual property. Mm-hmm. And so I made it very clear to people on my team that, they were all there for different reasons. Mm-hmm. And they're all there for very, very different inputs, but nothing was, beyond the allowable. And we had a very transparent process of making determinations as to what we were going to do and where we would focus resources. But I think, people respecting the talents of other people at the table is critically important. And so one of the things that I was always acutely aware of was ensuring that everybody knew why specific people have been chosen, mm-hmm. why they'd been chosen to be at this table and what they brought, in addition to what they brought as general knowledge and acumen, but they are exceptionally strong in this area. And that was something I wanted everybody to be aware of, because it was important for people to have that respect going in.
Another thing you said that struck me as very important was you align them with the goals of the enterprise, including phantom equity as part of their incentives.
Yeah, one of the things that I was I was counseled on early, and it really became very obvious to me, was that when I came into the business, we had a lot of different kind of compensation schemes and different people working in different areas and with different metrics. And with I would describe it as really a very loose bonus framework. And what I wanted to do was, number one, get everybody pulling in the same direction as it related to the company, which was challenging because you had certain people working in a particular department that had nothing to do with anything else. And so getting that alignment was really important. And the way I did it was I used, local sales incentives within different departments and different regions as one tool, and then I used phantom equity as another. And the way I balanced it was I said, if you're affecting the P&L directly on a cost basis, then you're going to play in the phantom equity game. If you're directing sales, you're going to play on the sales game. And there were really only one or two people who participated in both. So you were either direct drive on a sales basis, or you were, tied in as a shareholder partner. And what it did was it allowed our salespeople to be very aggressive in growing sales, while they had to work through the organization that was responsible for ensuring fulfillment could be done profitably. So it put me in a position where I didn't have to worry about whether, as a shareholder, the alignment of interests with the shareholder weren't being followed. They were being followed, very directly. But equally, because it was a net business and it was measured on EBITDA, they were keenly interested in seeing growth. They weren't just, they didn't just want to keep saying no to everything. And so I think it was a healthy tension, and I made it very clear to my team constantly that there had to exist a tension between sales and operations and sales and finance. And if that tension didn't exist, I was concerned.
Great. Well, you enjoyed enormous success, John, and thank you for sharing today.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thanks a lot, Ken.